So today I want to talk about Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. What have I gotten myself into? Like as a bookworm, as a lover of books and stories, there is no better feeling in the world when you discover an author and you realize that you just cannot stop reading their work because there's just something about their writing style and the way they approach stories and words and prose and structure all together. There's just something about the way they do things that feels like home. It feels like safe for you every time you return to them. There are a few writers who I have that emotional attachment with. Another example would be Haruki Murakami or Stephen King, and even to a very odd extent, even H.P. Lovecraft, because you wouldn't think his works are very comforting, but it's that's something I know, and something I know that if I pick up their work, even if I might not enjoy everything in the part that's taking place in the story, I know that the writing style and the structure and the themes that are being explored are just completely up my alley. And this writer, Carlos Rizafon, this is my second book by him, and he has already reached that spot for me. I know moving forward, anytime I pick up one of his books, it's just going to be a very natural, enjoyable, chill ride. I do not feel like I'm forcing myself to read his books. I do not feel it's cumbersome, not at all. I always feel at home. I'm always relaxed, and honestly, you see the book. This book is about you could say 500 pages, and I finished 500 pages in 3 4 days, and I didn't feel like it was 3 4 days. And I always, by the end of his books, I always wish the story would just stretch out even further. That's how you know you've stumbled upon a very good freaking writer. Excuse my French. That's how you know you stumbled upon an amazing world that you want to explore and dig deeper. For me, the Library of Forgotten Books have become that. It's reached that status. The thing I love and dislike about magical realism, all in the same sentence, is I love how little of the magic it gives you purposefully, and I love how much of it gets revealed throughout the story. What I mean by that is, um, in magical realism, sometimes there's a suspension of disbelief, meaning the author is not trying to explain the world to you in the way a heavy magic system book would do, such as Brandon Sanderson and Patrick Rothfuss, for example. Like those writers would try their best at least to explain to you the logic behind the magic in the world and why things are the way they are. In magical realism books, Murakami does this a lot, and Mr. Zafon too, which is things get revealed to you and it asks you for suspension of disbelief, but it never really explains to you what that thing was. Now, this book is a less egregious form of that. In The Angel's Game, so many things happened in that book that where by the end of it, I was left with more questions than answers. This one, I'm glad to say, is not like that. If you like your stories wrapped up and concluded pretty solid in a pretty solid way, I think this is perfect for that. But that said, I will have to say this, which is I enjoyed The Angel's Game much more than this one. Despite that, this is still 5 out of 5. This is still a magnificent entry, and it was the starting point of this world. And that's why this is always going to have a special place in my heart. What I love about the series is we're going to see more of these characters in book number 3, as I understand. In talking about characters, let's just get into it. Let's just discuss some of the characters in this magical world. We have, of course, Sempre. I don't know how I'm even going to spell their last name. I'm always worried, but I'm just going to say Sempre or and his son, which, of course, in the second book, I don't think this is a spoiler, but they play a his family at least, plays a major part in the protagonist of the second book. It's so lovely to see one of those characters from that family all grown up and a father themselves in this book. Now, I will have to say, despite the Sanford-san being adorably polite, dumb, cute guy who is very naive to the world despite being an older person, it's just this man is pure of heart and nothing can get passed through him. His son has much more of our second protagonist than he has of his father's attitude and spirit, which is funny. That said, I will have to say I found David from the second book to be much more entertaining than this protagonist. That said, it makes sense why this protagonist is the way he is. He's younger, he doesn't have much life experience, he is still trying to explore and see what he wants to do in life. Therefore, he's in a much more confused place. He's in that place where a lot of us are before we go into university. We're contemplating our major or we're contemplating what we even want to do in life. And for him, what he craves the most is an answer to a question that will not let him go inside. And therefore, he needs to discover the answer to that question. And the answer lies in this book. And what a marvelous question that is, too. It's so hard to discuss some of these details without spoiling it. But the way I would say this is just beautifully written. So my actually main criticism of the second book is that I felt like the main romance option was not that interesting. She was kind of boring, the second one. Here, both of the romance options, I would say, were extremely interesting, which is another thing I'm starting to realize with his works. He has a bunch of love triangles. At least two of his books so far have love triangles, which is not weird, but he does it so respectfully. In this one, less so, because that guy that's part of the love triangle is not anywhere seen in the book. We never meet him. So, our protagonist is really the main love interest if you think about it. But both of those love interests, which is Clara and Bay, both of them were very interesting characters, to be honest. And the trope that I really enjoyed, and I did not expect to enjoy, was the enemies to lovers trope, which this one has. This was one of those things where it's like that character is going to be a love interest, because when that character is introduced, they are introduced as a person who really dislikes this character. And the way it's written, it's like, that's going to change very, very soon. And there's also the other trope of the forgotten love, if somebody is bespoken to somebody else, but they have a change of heart and they have a change of mind, which is again very similar to what happens in the second book. I'm sorry I'm making that comparison to the second book a lot, because that's what I read first and then I came and I read this. Which, by the way, I don't know how people feel about that, but I will genuinely recommend you to read the second book first and read this as the second book. Because the second book is a prequel to the events that happen here. And I feel like it's pretty cool to have the context of what happened before this section of the story. So I would actually recommend you don't follow the publication order, follow chronological order. That's what I'm preferring so far. The one thing that I did not get enough of, and I just need to see more, is the cemetery of Forgotten Books itself, that location. This is a location where basically this giant library of books that are accumulated throughout time, books that you wouldn't easily find outside in the world, books that are either banned or rare or have a small print run, things that sometimes are undesirable from the world, or not necessarily, but like books that are genuinely forgotten throughout history. All of them are stored in this library. This library is where really the majority of the magical realism comes from, right? And I just wanted to learn more about it. This is the part about magic realism that bothers me. Sometimes it creates this place or a sense or feeling or characters that are so mysterious that you know are not ordinary. They have some splash of supernatural or some type of magic or just something out of this world, out of this ordinary, very unique. And the Cemetery of the Forgotten Books is that place. And I wanted to explore it. In the next, there's two more books in the series. If I do not get one book fully dedicated towards the library, its history, and how some of the magic kind of works, then I will be very disappointed by this series because I genuinely want to go inside that labyrinth of books and explore every single nook and cranny, and I really want that to happen. So I hope all of these books are building up to something awesome that is going to take place largely into the library. So after I'm done all of the books within the series, I am going to go deep dive into the theories and I'm going to talk spoilers and we're going to talk character connections. I want to do that. It's going to be so much fun. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully you watch that video when it comes out. Thank you for joining me. Have a good one.